All right, guys, we're going to be reacting to more Andrew, but this time it's going to be around this debate right here. It's going to be, again, the enemy of Charlie. She's pretty well known in the last couple of debates with Andrew. This debate was awesome. We're going to see me react to this, guys. Make sure you guys subscribe. And if you guys want to watch the video without my commentary, links in the description down below, okay? So jump in.
And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Sarah the Raging Tomato here, bringing to you live another Moderator Monday. This evening, I have with me Christopher Colt, new to the debate space, enemy Charlie, Marte Reyes, and Andrew Wilson, of course. The topic of the evening, or the question more so, is it immoral to take land by force? On the affirmative side, Christopher Colt, if you'd like to give your opening statement, please.
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to say thanks to Sarah and the Raging Tomato for hosting the debate, my co-debater Charlie for agreeing to participate, and Andrew and Marte for agreeing to lend their time and voice to, I think, what will be hopefully an important discussion that people find useful. So I think let's begin with what I would call the self-evident. What is theft? Well, it is the unauthorized taking of another person's property with the intent to permanently deprive the owner. Now, I would argue that the only logical basis for our confusion over whether such conquest as the destruction and displacement of indigenous tribes here in North America was not theft is largely because European settlers had very little understanding of the Native American way of life. In their view, possessions required an exchange of money, goods, or services, resulting in a legal document defining both their ownership and the parameters of it. However, we have philosophers such as John Locke who argued that our labor, our lives invested in cultivating and building upon that land establishes a legitimate claim to it. Force does not confer legitimacy. It only confers power, and might makes right is not a moral philosophy, but rather a confession of barbarity. History stands as a stark testament to this truth. Just as the United States acquisition of Native American lands was clearly and profoundly immoral, according to academic sources, so too is any land gained through violence and coercion. Now, this was not only well established in the post-World War era, but also is a core precept of most religious faiths. My opponents, one a self-described Orthodox Christian, the other more of a Christian nationalist adjacent, might appeal to a different authority. So let's turn to the spiritual lens, to the very faith they claim guides them, and discover how profoundly their stated position contradicts its core truths. First, consider the image of God, the imago Dei. The Orthodox Christian faith teaches us that every single human being, regardless of their nationality, ethnicity, or land, is created in the divine image, possessing inherent sacred dignity. When land is taken by force, it necessitates the dehumanization, violent subjugation, and dispossession of people made in God's own likeness. How can one, as an Orthodox Christian, justify such a profound violation of the sacred image of God in another human being for the sake of acquiring territory? Is land truly more valuable than a soul marked with God's image? We should also address the very concept of ownership. My opponents speak of conquest, of seizing land, as if humans possess ultimate dominion, yet their own holy traditions are unequivocal. God is the sole and ultimate owner of all creation. We are not owners, but humble stewards entrusted by God to manage his creation responsibly with love and justice and with consideration for all. Is forceful acquisition not the ultimate act of pride, an arrogant usurpation of God's sovereignty, attempting to steal not merely from fellow humans, but from God himself? And if these general prohibitions are not enough, our faith gives us a chillingly precise parable, the story of Naboth's vineyard in 1 Kings chapter 21, where King Ahab, a mighty ruler, coveted the small plot of land belonging to Naboth. Through deceit and violence, Ahab seized the vineyard. What was the divine response? The prophet Elijah delivered God's judgment, leading to the utter destruction of Ahab's royal line. The church fathers teach us that Ahab's sin was tantamount to theft from God himself. So I ask my opponents directly, was King Ahab's conquest of Naboth's land moral? If you say it was immoral, then you concede my entire argument. If you dare to say it was moral, then you stand in direct opposition to Holy Scripture and the clear judgment of God. Finally, let us consider the Orthodox Church's consistent stance on war and aggression. It does not possess a just war theory in the Western sense that might somehow rationalize conquest. While defensive war to protect the innocent might be a regrettable necessity in a fallen world, aggressive war for territorial gain is profoundly condemned. Killing, even in self-defense, requires spiritual repentance. How then can an act of aggression carried out for greed and material gain be considered anything less than a grievous sin requiring no repentance? Indeed, when the church is manipulated to justify state aggression, their own hierarchs have called it a profound betrayal of Orthodox tradition and even apostasy. Now, my opponent's position is not rooted in Orthodox Christianity. It is a secular, cynical ideology of might makes right. Thinly veiled by selective interpretation, it requires him to contradict core doctrines of human dignity, divine ownership, explicit
Man,
commandments,
this guy's
and
saying
the
a lot of
consistent
stuff. But
mind of the church. It is, in essence, a profound betrayal of the gospel itself. To take land by force is immoral, it is unjust, it is illegal, and for an Orthodox Christian, it is a spiritual rebellion against God.
all right,
Thank you.
let's just let it be.
Thank
Let
you,
it be. Let's see.
Christopher. Charlie, to you.
Let it be.
You're muted. You're muted.
Charlie, you're muted.
Sorry.
You gotta
There
unmute,
we
Chuck.
go. Sorry. Hi, I'm Enemy Charlie. I stream primarily on Twitch. My specialty is fantasy literature, not politics, history, or philosophy, but I comment anyway. And thank you for having me, Sarah. I'm very excited to be here. And thank you, Christopher Colt. So before I dive into the meat of my argument, I would like to quickly address and clarify my frame of reference on land rights and morality. Because we'll be discussing colonization, it is important to clarify that land ownership is not a universal concept. The indigenous peoples of the Americas did not have the same legal structures as European settlers. Borders as they exist today are a modern construct. So when we talk about who has the right to specific tracts of land and why, my conception of land rights can be summed up by Article 26 of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. Indigenous peoples have the rights to lands, territories, and resources which they have traditionally owned, occupied, or otherwise used or acquired. If you live there and work the land and there is no one in living memory that used to live there and was deposed, you have the right to the land. A lack of legal ownership under a European legal structure is not a valid reason for the seizure of indigenous lands. And now on to morality. While I believe that morality is subjective, human beings across most cultures and time periods generally agree that murder and theft are wrong in most contexts. This is across Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, etc. Humans are social creatures and we need each other. Murdering and stealing from each other are not conducive to building a lasting, thriving society. I will reference the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Operating under the Force Doctrine inevitably leads to being subject to it yourself. In The Wretch of the Earth, Francophone scholar Frantz Fanon wrote, "The exploited man sees that his liberation implies the use of all means and that of force first and foremost. When in 1956, after the capitulation of Monsieur Guy Mollet to the settlers in Algeria, the Front de Libération Nationale, in a famous leaflet, stated that colonialism only loosens its hold when the knife is at its throat. No Algerian really found these terms too violent. The leaflet only expressed what every Algerian felt at heart. Colonialism is not a thinking machine nor a body endowed with reasoning facilities. It is violence in its natural state, and it will only yield when confronted with greater violence. The Algerian Liberation War ended in 1962 with approximately 500,000 Algerians and 30,000 French dead. And here I will concede, though violent decolonization efforts are rarely successful through sheer force alone, the price of the Force Doctrine, paid in human lives and resources, is too costly for any nation to follow for long. The more violent a regime, the faster it falls. Many European nations have wisely retracted their claims to foreign lands for this very reason."
Thank you, Charlie. And Mark,
You know what's crazy about this position of both of them? It's just coming from a place of being an apologist, you know, like feeling guilt. It's a way of feeling guilt for the heritage, kind of a thing. That's what I'm getting so far from this position. And also, it's like they're putting Christianity there because Christianity is associated with Western and Eastern European traditions.
So my opponent, Enemy Charlie, had brought up the golden rule, which assumes that everybody wants to be treated the same at the end of the day, which is a crazy notion, actually, if you really think about this. So I'm going to go into my little short thing. I'll be quick. So the situation with land conquest could be thought of as a morality issue on the international scale. So who gets to enforce morality on the international level? It's usually the country or a coalition of countries with the biggest sticks or the most money. So while my other opponent, Christopher Colt, can say might makes right, we've never asserted that. Only might only makes. So what you can do is, if you feel that one of these big countries is morally slighted your people, nothing really sucks, but this is simply the reality of the world. Justice does not exist if there isn't an effective way to enforce it. We can point fingers all day that we want and say that there's something morally wrong, but at the end of the day, there's little else or nothing to do about it. To Andrew.
Oh, thank you,
short and
Marte.
sweet.
And Andrew, to you, please.
Well, thank you. I also would like to thank my opponents for the brutal slaughter which is about to happen this evening. This is my hats off salute to you. I even combed my hair this evening because I wanted to show respect. I didn't wear my black shirt even though this is going to be a funeral. I'd like to point out, firstly, that this debate is absurd on its face. While I'll grant there could be cases where using force to remove people from their land by force can be immoral, in and of itself, using force to occupy or take land cannot be immoral. My opponents can't possibly believe this either, or they will need to explain things like taxes, specifically property tax, which is an assessed and forced payment of an asset to an entity on a thing you own, which if you don't pay your property taxes, your property becomes a default, and it's taken by force, Christopher Colt. It's taken by force if you default. Or let's take a look at the American Revolution, in which we annexed by violence a rather large amount of land, which was owned by the Crown of England. In fact, my examples of force doctrine being used to occupy or conquer land for, quote, good are vast, and my opponents would probably agree with every single one of them. So what are we really even talking about here? Imagine trying to navigate the redresses which would be necessary here if we actually took our opponents at face value. It's mind-boggling how much land has changed hands in a very short historic period of time, let alone long historic periods of time. If we attempted to redress it all, it would be not only a monumental task, but it could actually lead to some pretty absurd and hilarious outcomes. Like, let's take the Native American example. Say we have Tribe A and Tribe B. Tribe A has a document from the government of promised land, which the government then stole from them. Then Tribe A pursues redress for this and is awarded for occupied land in its full amount. Then Tribe B sues now Tribe Land A and gets awarded even more money because Tribe A stole all that land from Tribe B 500 years before that land was stolen from Tribe A by the United States government. Do I think that that would be hilarious? Yes. Do I think that that actually would be what would have to happen if my opponents were consistent in their logic after I show them the hundreds of examples of natives stealing land from each other? Yes.
And not only that, let me say something about regarding this topic. The Native Americans were just still fighting each other even by the beginning of the 20th century, guys. They were going at each other. This is completely a new concept where Native Americans all supposed to be in the same thing, kind of a thing. It's all new, guys. These people were used to just fight for, terrain and land for thousands of years.
Imagine if we did this, by the way, for every perceived injustice of land changing hands. It's absurd and also hilarious. In short, I'm not even really sure what my opponent's position is here. But in asking, is it immoral to take land by force, the answer is, well, sometimes. Sometimes it is. And sometimes it isn't. Right? But we wouldn't be appealing to the idea that just doing that in and of itself was always immoral, because that would be preposterous. It would monolithically put up a thing which you guys don't even believe. How do I know you don't believe it? Well, because Chuck over here already told us. She conceded that force doctrine was moral, using Nigeria as an example of revolution, which is also hilarious. Force doctrine, so that you understand what it actually is.
Algeria.
Yeah, whatever.
Algeria.
Whatever it was. Okay, the point is, and by the way, I didn't interrupt you once, Chuck. That wasn't very nice, Chuck. But anyway, the idea here is of what force doctrine is pretty simple. Force doctrine is just saying that all rights come from men.
It's true.
Not making a might makes right argument. Rather, force doctrine is giving you a descriptor for how the world works. Now, you can argue with force doctrine if you want to with that descriptor, but you'd have to replace it with a more accurate descriptor, and nobody to date has been able to do so because it's an accurate descriptor. Otherwise, I would not have come up with it. You say, do unto others.
You know what's
as
crazy?
you would
That description has changed the landscape and the conversations that we currently have, even in modern debates. I'm not a debater, but I love debates. And what I see a lot of folks and a lot of conservatives grasping that concept, like you know what? Maybe allowing certain things were never in our favor, because at the end of the day, as a collective, men can take some of those rights away. And by that definition, if you're giving rights for people, and by nature, those people cannot defend their rights, why are you giving the rights of these people? Meaning, I don't want to talk about certain things here, but I guess you guys know what I'm talking about. The thing is that the Force Doctrine in itself, it just changed the ballgame. None of this stuff makes sense unless we don't understand the concept. And that's an extension. You're telling me you have a Force Doctrine that goes, men being the one following and, enforcing law. So let's say you just flip that, where females are now in the enforcement space. You think a lot of these laws are going to be passed? No, because they don't have the power, guys. You can have literally 100% of the enforcement, right, towards the opposite sex. And guys, I don't think that's going to even happen. Like I would say, you only need like 10% of the male population to just go berserk. And I'm being nice. I think it's less than that. I think less than 2%, 2 or 3%. And this thing that we call nations, country, they go bad. 1% of the male population is what, 1.3, 1.5 million people? Like you can create some weird stuff with that, man. If men at the end of the day, we don't get what we want, enforcement, Force Doctrine is the ones that's going to determine how do we move forward. And of course, and this apply to religion as well.
To you. Well, here's the thing that's interesting about that. By whose metric? The secularist metric or by the Christian metric? Which metric should we use and utilize, since that's part of Christian ethics and not a secular ethic? Why should we adhere to your version of what that means? You say morality is subjective, and then at the same time you say that there's some type of universal here which you're appealing to. Right? All morality is subjective, but universally it's always wrong to take land. That's a contradiction in and of itself. That's A and not A. When you say land ownership is not universal, well, I agree. I agree that this is a social construction. So we have to start with what ownership actually is. I would make the claim that ownership is, one, a declaration that a thing belongs to you, and then that would have to be backed by some kind of force for you to keep said thing. For instance, let's say for a second you were walking through a desert and you were thirsty, and you came across a dead body with a full canteen. If you took that canteen and drank from it, would you be stealing? Or would you have a deference of ownership where you would feel like this was a justified transfer of property because the person who was there no longer needed the canteen? And then if somebody tried to take the canteen from you, would you say, no, it's mine? I think you would, right? So I think just by the establishment of what we would consider ownership to be, I think you're going to end up having to concede to our position. When you say taking land by force is immoral, I really do want you to contend with the tax doctrine. I think that you're probably a pretty pro-taxes guy, if you're a Democrat anyway. And I would love to know how that's not theft by the same metric that you gave us for what theft is. Also, you said orthodox war theory.
And that's a good point, because that's a hard position to really defend. If you're against, stolen land, all that stuff, you cannot be okay with taxes. That's a hard position to have. Because taxation is literally like theft. The government is just telling you, for that dollar you're giving me, I'm going to take 7% or 15%. Why? Just I don't know. Because they said so.
Yeah, no, it's not. No. We have saints who conducted an aggressive war like Saint Helga, who literally unleashed pigeons that were on fire to burn down an entire city and killed everybody inside it. She's a saint. You have no idea what you're talking about, because Christianity and Christian ethics are pluralistic, right? You cannot make the universals. They're going to be case-by-case specific for a reason. You say, and I'll just end with this, When you're talking about Native Americans, I wouldn't want to say Indians and offend anybody's delicate sensibilities. What you're alluding to is the myth of the noble savage. I'm going to tell you the truth about what was really going on with Native Americans. They were sacrificing each other on top of temples, cutting each other's hearts out. They were raping children. They were killing and murdering each other in mass all the time.
Yeah.
Nonstop. And if you came across a culture like that, what would you do? Is the first question.
Yeah, that's the question. What would you do? You would talk about these issues in circle, sit down and kumbaya about it. Now you have to take action. You have to take action.
I'll ask, what would we just leave alone? Yeah, right. Yeah, right, like that's ever happened. But I'd be happy to hear about the myth of the noble savage. And we can go tribe by tribe if you want, and you can explain how noble they really were when we get into their actual history.
He's ready.
So, in short, I just want to summarize with this. You don't understand Force Doctrine. You don't understand Orthodox theology. I don't even think you understand the prism of the history that we're talking about. And on top of all of this, just to kind of tie it all together, by your own definition of what theft is, taxation would be theft, and I want you to say it. And with that, that's the end of my opening statement. Thank you.
Bam.
Thank you to all of you. I appreciate it very much.
Now
As a kind reminder to the audience, we are going to get through our open dialogue for the debate. Then we will move into closing statements. Then we will read and respond to your kind super chats. After that, of course, as always, our favorite part, we will move into open panel dumpster fire, where you're allowed to come on as the public and ask questions and prompt and all of those fun things. Ladies and gentlemen, I leave the floor open to you.
Yeah, so if you don't mind, I'd like to begin with just a query so we can get some semantics taken care of.
In fairness, you did query several things, and I think Charlie was about to respond.
I haven't made a query yet.
Hey, White Knight. White Knight right out the bat. White Knight right out the bat, bro. This guy cannot allow his partner to just get burned a little bit, right? He just had to White Knight right away. You didn't IFBB guy, IFBB pro Marte Reyes, he's not White Knighting for Andrew. He knows very well he can take care of himself. For this guy right away, he wanted to White Knight.
I made an opening
You made
statement.
several in your opening statement.
If I have a query, did you answer to any of them?
You didn't give it an opportunity to
That's
answer.
right. So that's what I'm doing right now.
Query?
I'm not even trying to engage in that. Right now, I just want to get some semantics done. So the thing is I want to agree to some terms with you guys so we're not talking past each other. Don't you agree that that's very important in a debate, that we get our semantics taken care of so we're not talking past each other? We know exactly what the other side means by the words that they're saying. Can we do that real quick?
Are you setting the standard?
Like
no,
definitions
I'm going to ask you for what your standard is, and you can definitely ask me for what mine is. I just want to make sure that our semantics are in order.
All right, let's go. I just want to make sure that Charlie gets a chance to make the point.
Of course.
I'm
my God,
with discussing semantics, but I don't want it to get to
just the White Knight, man. It's just, I don't know why, but when it comes down to stuff like this, I don't know why, but I sort of like, there's that, I don't know, Christopher, man. Hey, Christopher, you look like a very good guy, right? Shouldn't start the debate like this. You look weak now, trying to just simp a little bit for her. No, you have to let her burn, man, a little bit. Let her burn, and then when she's on, she on the rope, then you can save her, I guess. But you want to save her right away. I don't think that's okay, in my opinion.
a nitpicky nitty-gritty because I'd rather actually discuss the conversation at hand rather than
No, that's how you guys get away. No, that's how you guys get away with it. See, she wants that because she can just go with the subjective term and just move from left field to right field, left to right, center to home plate, and you never know what the hell they're talking about. That's why Andrew wants to take care of this now.
Ourselves out over definitions.
Okay, well, I'm not looking necessarily at just definitions. I just want to make sure that we understand what we mean. You agree with me that words can have different meanings for different people, right?
Sure.
Okay, so then I want to make sure that when I use the word theft or when I use the word conquest, we're talking about the same thing. Otherwise, we're going to be talking past each other in this debate. So, Chris, what is theft from your view?
The repossession of a piece of property in order to retain it unnecessarily, meaning that you could have attained it.
Yo, taking something that is not yours. Simple as that, bro. Like, why you have to overcomplicate it? Taking something that doesn't belong to you. That's simple. That's it.
Piece of property a different
Oh
way
my god.
in most cases, except you've decided that you're going to
Look at that.
circumvent that, short circuit it, and
don't
take somebody
know.
else's property instead.
Repossession of a piece of property when you
By-
could have gained it in
When you could have gained it a different way.
when you could have gained it a different way. Okay. And then when we're discussing force doctrine, will you accept our definition of what force doctrine is, which is that it's a descriptor which explains that rights come from men? Do you agree that that's our view?
I agree that that is your view, yeah.
Okay, so you agree that that's our view. So you're not going to later say that you guys are saying might makes right and things like this, because that's not what we're saying, right?
Yeah, I'm sure we can clarify that further at some point.
Okay.
Gotcha. Okay. So force doctrine,
All right.
you agree with our view. And then the last thing that I want to ask you is conquest. What do you consider conquest to be?
I think that's going to vary depending on the period of history that you're looking at.
What do you consider it to be?
I would consider it to be an invasion of a sovereign space for the purpose of taking up ownership of that space.
Invasion of a sovereign space to take up ownership. Okay.
That is kind of weird.
That's all I wanted
Sovereign
to
space,
know.
meaning
I just wanted to make
if what if nobody has ever touched that land and I conquered it myself by placing a flag? Would that be? I don't know. Some of these definitions are kind of iffy.
make sure that we're not speaking past each other. If you guys want any of the semantics to be clarified by us, now's a great time to do that before we move into whatever your queries are.
So I'm sorry, force doctrine is specifically laws are made by
No, not
men?
law.
No, that
Not
rights
law.
come from men.
Rights come from men.
Yeah,
the,
that's it.
The gender, not us as a species.
No, the sex, not the gender.
Nice job. No,
Wait.
Andrew's so good at this. I have to go back to that guy. You see how I said the sex, not gender. You see that? Because gender is a different kind of conversation that you might get set way, and you can just. I don't know how to explain this, but Andrew is so good at this, man.
Rights come from men.
Yeah.
The gender, not us as a species.
No, the
See,
sex.
the gender, not us as a species. He said no, the sex, not the gender.
It's not the gender.
Okay.
Dude.
I'm sorry. Do you agree with me that gender and sex have two distinct meanings?
I think that is not relevant to the conversation at hand.
Of course.
You asked it, so why did you bring it
That's
up if it's
fine.
not
I
relevant?
know what you mean. I know what you
Uh-huh.
mean.
Okay, so you would agree
Just want
with
to
me.
clarify that we were
Right
talking
away.
about
Yeah,
the
so
species.
when I say men, I'm talking about sex.
I love what
not
like Rachel Tomato. She's laughing because she knows she appreciating Andrew's talent to dismantle all this craziness.
About
yeah,
the
so when I
species.
say men, I'm talking about sex. I'm not talking about those who identify as men. I'm talking about the sex specific of men.
That wasn't the question.
Yes, it
I
was
was
the question.
asking if you were
said the
talking
gender.
about species, us as a species.
Are men and
think
women a different species?
No, it's
I
like
think I think she just utilized the word gender, but in terms of your position, Andrew, I think she meant the same thing that you would say in terms of
The
Nah.
reason I'm really
many
clear,
archaic,
I'm
many
real, I'm
archaic
very
legal
clear about
documents
this
will
for a
use,
reason.
will use men as a you know, as a stand-in for our species, as the human species. They will say men.
What?
That's
Yeah,
all I
that's
was
true,
asking.
or mankind, or things
Mankind,
like
yeah.
this.
Sure,
Yeah, I agree.
that is what I was asking.
Yeah,
That is
sure.
all
And
that I
I'm-
was asking.
I'm willing to grant on the era specific, what you're talking about, that could be the case when they're also referencing women when they say mankind. I can even agree to that. But the reason I'm not willing to grant something like gender, or you saying, do you mean the gender of men, is because that has a loaded meaning. So I'm going to semantically distinguish between the two and say my meaning of man has nothing to do with gender, but it has to do with sex. That's all.
Okay, that's fine.
There you
Okay,
go,
good.
man. That's he did that like a master, like a craftsmanship, master craftsmanship, whatever, man. Like, there's a reason why, because he can understand that the topic of gender can move you to so far away of the conversation that you're going to end up spending 1 or 2 hours talking about something that has nothing to do with the premise, which is rights come from men because of the concept of enforce.
Okay, so I'm ready for the queries. What do you guys got?
Wow, they're
go ahead.
afraid.
Well, first, I would like to say that I was not invoking the myth of the noble savage. I am quite aware that some indigenous tribes of the Americas were, in fact, quite brutal. Talking about
Yeah,
the
so when I say
Yeah, I'm gonna leave it there. I'm gonna just react to this, but there's more. I'm gonna react to the entire thing, right? This is good content, man. The good content. This is one of those things that's very good content. Only for the debate, though. The Q&A, all that stuff, I'm not gonna react to that. But good content. Already we can see how their body language is not liking what Andrew's doing, because what happened is, and this is what I noticed in a lot of debates when it comes down to leftism, they like to just not get into the semantics or dissolve the semantics, but this is how they move. This is how they go to the spectrum. This is how they move up and down, and this is why Andrew wants to just get certain things clear, and that way at the end or during the debate there are no questions about the semantics. Gender, you get into more subjective terminology, you get into more subjective, conversation. Sex, right in the middle. You cannot just go through that subjective or relative conversation. That's why he wanted to just get it done there. Let me know what you guys think, guys. I will see you next one.